Hello, everyone, and welcome to Up Supercast, the only podcast where Shawn Layden is going to sign on as executive chairman. I'm your host, Muzzy, and joining me today is William.
I, for one, welcome our new Layden overlords.
Brandon.
Have you ever seen Like Mike? It's a good movie.
And Ills.
I prefer Doug Bowser.
Well, no, we're stuck with Shawn Layden, okay? Doug Bowser has a very important job to do. No, we're not stuck with him. We're happy to have him.
We are privileged to announce.
Yeah,
Speak for yourselves. Bowser or nothing. Bowser or bust.
No. Doug Bowser's busy, okay? Unlike Shawn Layden, which maybe let's go straight into it. Shawn Layden no longer has a job. He's
he's retired. He's gone.
He's done.
He's going to the pizza heaven in the sky. Pizza Hut in the sky.
just like Reggie. Just like Reggie. So, Shawn Layden, if you don't know, he was the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment America. He was also the executive chairman of Sony Worldwide Studios. So he was very important to the vision of Sony's first-party games.
Yes.
So, very big departure. And I'll talk about this because... Yeah, sorry.
He sort of started at the start of this gen, right?
Yes.
Zach Trin was the former one. Like year one of PS4, Shawn Layden takes over.
Yes, so he took over pretty much at the very beginning of this generation. Has been... and then specifically, I believe it was in 2016 when he took over Worldwide Studios. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and now it is... he has departed the company. And I want to talk about this because it was strange. I mean, we would have talked about it either way, but...
Before you talk about how strange it was, can I just ask you a quick question about it?
Sure.
Are they going to... Because Sony has a history of copying Nintendo, are they going to hire a guy with the last name... Are they just going to hire a guy with the last name Neo-Cortex?
I knew he was going there.
Just for the record, we do not actually believe Sony copies everything Nintendo does. I want to throw that out there.
Who says that?
There's a lot. We got a lot of evidence.
Stop it.
Fully subscribe to that conspiracy theory.
We've already gotten off to a bad start. Well,
Sony ninjas are in Nintendo HQ as we speak.
So, Shawn Layden. The reason this is weird is because usually when these things happen, for example, when Jack Tretton was left, they gave us some time. They're like, hey, Jack Tretton's going to be leaving. Usually these things happen around the start of a new fiscal year, right? Mm-hmm. So, around April, that's usually the time. Maybe like April to June is usually the quarter where that happens, right? We usually have a lot of lead-in time. We usually know who's gonna be replacing him pretty much immediately. We don't have any of that.
When Jack Tretton stepped down, they immediately announced Shawn Layden.
Yeah, it was in the very same press release. Jack Tretton stepping down, new head will be Shawn Layden. We did not get that this time. We don't know who's gonna be filling in the shoes.
And it was effective immediately.
Yes, effective immediately.
Damn. Someone else got caught up in the Me Too movement.
So, I
don't think it was that.
Thankfully, I don't believe it was that. Instead, though, we did have some interesting articles come up the day after his departure. Basically saying, hey, Sony America, Sony Europe, they're having some problems with each other. And specifically, I want to call out two individuals, Shawn Layden, of course, and Jim Ryan, who is the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment as a whole. You may know him from some Gamescom. Yeah, as of earlier this year. And you may know him from some Gamescom conferences or some, Paris Games Week conferences. He was essentially, before he became head of SIE as a whole, he was essentially the head of Sony Europe, right? Mm-hmm. And apparently there's been some conflict between the American and European branches. Some specific examples cited as problems they were having. Jim Ryan was very against opening up the crossplay barriers. And apparently Shawn Layden secretly was pushing for it. A lot of us blamed Shawn Layden. We were wrong.
Jim Ryan got.
Yeah, sorry,
lost that battle.
Shawn.
Yeah.
Though it's funny, and I want to take a brief aside here. Jim Ryan did use this opportunity to announce that crossplay was going out of beta, and he's like, there's a bad record of people who win the generation winning the next one. Jim Ryan very strategically placed this announcement to make himself look like a a hero, and I think that's pretty great.
That's very funny. It was a break glass in case of emergency situation, and they're like, you know what? Why not break it now?
Yeah. So they did that, which is cool. Cool that, no longer needs Sony oversight for cross-play. But yeah, weird thing to announce right now, to be honest. Especially when this article comes out, And then another thing that came out, which will lead into the next news story. Apparently, Mr. Shawn over here, not particularly fond of like a focus on cloud and services type stuff, which is a huge push for Jim Ryan, and we've seen, at Sony's Sony's investor briefings, this is what they perceive as the future: cloud streaming services, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
And this comes right off the heels of an announcement. The very next day after Shawn Layden stepped down, they announced big changes to PlayStation Now. So if you don't know what PlayStation Now is, it's like Game Pass, right? Except you can also stream all your games. You can download the games that are available on PS4. If they're PS3 games, you have to stream them, though. Got a big old price cut, though. Used to be $20 a month. It is now $10 a month. You can get it for $60 a year. Basically, all the prices got cut in half. And they now have this Premier Selection that will be, cycled in and out every 3 months. The games that are going to be available for the next 3 months are God of War, Uncharted 4, Infamous Second Son, and Grand Theft Auto 5, which is a big one. So yeah, I want to talk about PlayStation Now, because obviously this is a response to Game Pass. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, well, they can call me when you can download the games, because
you can. I just said you can. You clearly were not listening.
It's the PS3 games you can download.
Yeah,
PS3 games you can't.
But PS4 games you totally can, including the new God of War, including Uncharted 4, including Grand Theft Auto 5.
I mean, there's so many things to get to here, right? Like, you went over a ton of stuff. But it's the thing we oftentimes forget when it comes to these companies, is that, especially with Microsoft and Sony, they're bigger corporations than just their video game divisions, right? There are directors that obviously they have to answer to. And like you said, Sony has been very interested in streaming, right, and building up their own services, and has been very interested in attaching PlayStation to those brands. PlayStation Vue is their TV service, essentially, right?
Yep.
And they made sure to make it PlayStation. Because that's their most successful brand right now. So I imagine that there might be more oversight. And at a DICE talk that Shawn Layden gave earlier this year, he talked about a bunch of stuff, but he oftentimes said he likes games that people can finish, right? He says, when we're making these games, we want to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, sort of, right? And for, the larger service-based model of games as a service, a bunch of other things, that very much is opposed to the idea of having a finite ending, a sort of beginning, middle, end.
Well, damn. Because I was going to agree with that, but I don't, man. I like the push for, obviously, internet and streaming based, gaming and stuff, but I still want games that I can finish. What the fuck?
And I mean, we've seen
those two things don't have to be in conflict. Sorry.
We've seen it with other single-player games, right? Like, Assassin's Creed is slowly moving to a more and more, service-based model. They've talked about how they want future Assassin's Creed games to not even, necessarily have a proper ending. They're just going to keep going and going.
That's exhausting. That's why I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game.
They're just going to have basically little mini-stories, and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think... obviously, a lot of this is conjecture, right? About what Shawn Layden did versus what they will do now without him. Yeah. But I do think it's pretty fair to say that the push for big triple or really quadruple A, single player experiences, though, right? Confined single player experiences. I think that came from Shawn Layden, right? These cinematic single player experiences. You have to wonder, is that going to change without Shawn there, right? Is that going to change with PlayStation Now changing to be more of a focal point, right?
I hope not.
It'll be interesting to see what this does to their first-party output, right?
Because, I mean, it is worth mentioning that the Sony Europe versus Sony sort of America branch for PlayStation has been a thing for the whole generation. Back when the PS4 was first announced, you can go back and listen to podcasts where sort of people mentioned that they had heard that this was a struggle, right? Layden was sort of ascendant in the later PS3 generation, where sort of games like The Last of Us and Uncharted and a bunch of these big sort of single player focused games helped their brand so much. So you could see why he attaches so much of the company to that, and why, if they want to go a different direction, he may have wanted to leave, or they said, we want someone else that's willing to sort of go along with what our strategy is. And so it'll be interesting to see, like you said, it's always hard to tell how much a single person plays a role in these companies that are so large, right? But when you are the head of these studios, you know, like he said in that same talk that, you know, they gave Guerrilla two options, a game where essentially it was going to be another Killzone, but like set in a place with werewolves, or Horizon Zero Dawn, and sort of like he wanted to create an environment where they could make Horizon, you know? And so there's the question of, does that change now, right? Is suddenly, you know, a company like Naughty Dog, which is famous for having new IPs every gen, right? From Crash to Jack to Uncharted. This is the one generation they haven't made a new IP, right? Does that continue into the future? It's hard to say.
Well, I don't understand why those two ideas are in conflict in his mind. Like, why can't you focus on the streaming and have, you know, great single player games?
I guess the idea would be your first party wouldn't necessarily be profitable if you're doing, you know, if you're gonna do a service-based model, right? But that's not necessarily conducive to games like The Last of Us and games like Horizon, you know, God of War, Spider-Man. It's like, these are games that are kind of one and done, but also, like, you know, took years and years and years and a lot of man hours to develop for basically just this contained experience, right? And we like that, of course, but does that make sense for, like, does that get someone to keep subscribing for $10 a month when, you know, let's look at 2019, for example. Your first party output is like Days Gone at the beginning of the year, and then you don't have anything until basically Concrete Genie and then Death Stranding at the end of the year, right? Versus, you know, maybe having more. I mean, I think one of the big things that like Game Pass hit it off was Sea of Thieves, right? Because Sea of Thieves was a game that you kind of felt okay continuing to pay for the service because, oh, Sea of Thieves is, you know, just, it's always kind of gonna be there, and I can always go back to it, right?
Yeah, but isn't the counter that you always have the older games to play? You know, nobody's ever gonna finish the whole catalog.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know,
you have your back
because of that.
You have your back,
and that would
catalog.
pad their you know their year. They wouldn't have to put out so many games because they'd always have that backlog there that anybody could play.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's just harder for, if you're moving to a model where instead of selling $60 copies, you're trying to sell $15, $10 a month subscriptions. I think the question then becomes like, well, how do we make these games profitable? And is a game like, and I do think like games like The Last of Us will continue, right? I'm not here to, I don't want to put too much doom on this. Like, oh, you know, single player Sony is dead. Yeah. But I do think that, you know, I think we are going to start seeing more games as a service type games from Sony, right?
Do we have like a clear picture of how much people make versus like individual sales versus subscription models?
Honestly, we don't, because right now, like, things are kind of weird right now because subscription services are just getting started. Game Pass is doing very aggressive, you know, very very aggressive things, pricing structures to try to get you on board, and they don't really release subscriber numbers, so we don't really even know like how much money these companies are making. You know,
I mean,
versus
sort of. Like if you imagine like on the digital storefront, right? They're getting all of it, right? Which is why these companies love to push digital, because they don't have to, you know. But like a retail copy, you get like $40 on like a $60 game, basically, right? Like give or take. And so like the thought is, but the thing that companies love more than anything else is just consistent, like guaranteed income, right? So if you say we have 2 million subscribers a month, we know exactly how much we're making. We can do that, right? We can plan around that. But I do think it's interesting because we mentioned last week about Last of Us 2 not having multiplayer, right? And Naughty Dog came out and said, no, we've been working on a multiplayer thing, but it doesn't fit into The Last of Us 2, basically, right? Like, The Last of Us 2 got too big, this thing got too big, they couldn't be in one package, and both come out on the same day. And it's like, well, then you wonder, like, this standalone multiplayer thing potentially from Naughty Dog, is that going to be their first sort of foray for first party into a service type game, right? Like, because they haven't done that really this generation. It'll be interesting to see how that looks. What from Sony that type of game looks like.
Yeah, and I mean we were even saying, I mean next year Predator is coming out, right? which, I mean, easy to forget about that game, I think, but that is a first-party game, and that is a multiplayer focus.
I don't even know what that game is, so it's easy to not even hear.
Yeah, well, so there's
Friday the 13th steps.
Yeah, there's a game around the Predator franchise made by the guys who made the Friday the 13th game.
And it's
published by Sony.
Yeah.
Which is...
Maybe I heard about it. I feel like it's something that just came and went.
Well, it's not out yet. But
it's not out yet.
Like an announcement.
Yeah, sure.
It was like an announcement.
To play thing, right?
But I think part of it, right, is because like it's not necessarily in the mold of Sony first party games that we've been used to for the last 5-6 years. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, have they announced with PlayStation now that all their first party games are going to be there day one? Or see, I wish they would do that because I would totally jump on board because then I could just pay $10 a month for Game Pass and I would just never have to buy a game again. So I'm going to end up saving money.
Yeah.
In the long run.
I mean, for me, I think the difference is like there was the MPD. They published the top 10 best-selling games for both consoles, right? And like God of War and Spider-Man were on the PS4 top 10. There was not an Xbox exclusive that was on their top 10, right? So like clearly, it's just Microsoft looked at the value proposition and said, hey, if our exclusives haven't been doing incredibly well this gen, it's much easier to suddenly make them all available day one, right? And get that money from Game Pass. Sony, there's more of a, you have to look at the different numbers of like, God of War sells 15 million copies. How much is it worth putting that on there day one instead of doing it a year later, right? But it does lower the value proposition, right? And so it's sort of
exactly. It makes somebody looking for a value out of it like me just be like, maybe not.
Wait, so Xbox doesn't put all their games on Game Pass, do they?
They do.
If it's a new game and it's first party, it's on their day one.
Yeah, if it's published by Microsoft, it will be on Game Pass day one. So Sony's model is a little bit different. And I want to talk about it real quick.
Or even before day one, and like Gears of War, Gears 5 was there like 4 days before it came out.
Sure, you even get early access. You're starting to get early access to games on Game Pass with Microsoft. But I wonder, with Sony, how do you guys feel? So it is now the same price as Game Pass, right? They're now both $9.99 a month. They both offer the ability to download games, right? The key difference is Sony's doing this. They both have games that cycle in and out, but Sony is cycling out their own first-party games. I wonder if you guys had a take on that.
Ooh.
Wait, Microsoft isn't doing that?
No, Microsoft. Once it's on Game Pass and if it's published by Microsoft, it's staying on the service. They're going to cycle out third-party games, of course, right? Like games from Capcom and Activision, whatever. Those games will cycle in and out. But if it is published by Microsoft, that game will be on Game Pass for pretty much, you can assume, forever, right?
I mean, obviously, I don't like that for a PS.
Yeah. I mean, 3 months is a short time.
3 months is weird, right? Because it's like,
damn,
3 months I get to play.
Yeah,
so you get to play Grand Theft Auto and Uncharted and God of War and Infamous for the next 3 months, and then after that they'll cycle it out with something else. And they claim that those premier titles will be, they claim is like, the best of what PS4 has to offer, right? So they're gonna have like these 4, who knows what the exact number will be every month to month, but they're going to have like around 4 like focal point games. Like these are the games you get to play right now, and then cycle those out.
Wait, so if you download it, does it go away after those 3 months?
Yes, it does. You no longer have a license to it. So yeah.
Damn.
Which is like the opposite of Game Pass, right? Game Pass. Like,
do you get a discount like you do on Game Pass?
I don't know actually, but I do want to talk about a key difference between PS Now and Game Pass, which I think is actually pretty interesting and maybe makes the playing field a little bit more even here. When you pay that $9.99, not only do you have a $59.99 for a year, which is a crazy value, right? $60 for a year.
That's a good.
I mean,
deal.
that's the cost of plus. But also, when you're playing a game that is on PlayStation Now and you have that Now subscription, you don't have to have Plus to play online with that game.
That's pretty good.
Which I think is a pretty big difference, actually, because if you want to play those games online on your Xbox, right, you gotta have Game Pass Ultimate, or you gotta have Xbox Live on top of that, right? But which is an extra $5 a month, essentially.
Well, if you were smart like us and bought like 3 years.
Well, sure, but that's not gonna be forever, right? Like you're still at some point you're gonna have to pay $15 a month. And I do think it's interesting that this is.
I don't have to for 3 years.
But sure, but like. For $10, you don't have to pay for Plus for any multiplayer game that is on the service.
That is cool.
That's a good
I think that,
but also you don't get the free games, I'm guessing, right? for PS Plus.
Oh, sure. No, you don't get the Plus games, right?
Yeah, so
yeah.
And you also, if it's a first-party game, it's only going to be there for 3 months.
Yeah. So I mean, I think clearly Game Pass and PS Now have their pros and cons, right? I do think that these changes even the playing field a little bit, because I think before you could say Game Pass was just runaway a better value, right?
Yeah.
But I do think this, I mean, because of it being cheaper now and having an even cheaper option than that, not needing PS Plus, I think this kind of evens things up a little bit. Sure, you don't get every Sony
$10 game. $10 just in general definitely helps it. I mean, $20 was like, boy, I don't know if I can do that. But
yeah,
$10.
I mean, this is a big price cut, right? I mean,
yeah, literally.
And it's interesting too, because I wonder if with Microsoft, with the Game Pass subscription, do you guys think that comes bundled with xCloud? Because with PlayStation Now, you get the ability to stream to any device, essentially, right?
That's a good question.
Included in that subscription. And I think with xCloud, we haven't known for sure, but the thought has kind of been, maybe that'll cost like an extra tier or something, right?
If I were to make a guess, I would say it'd probably be lumped in with Game Pass Ultimate.
Game Pass Ultimate, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm not, that's an interesting thing. And also a weird loser in all of this is like Stadia is just continuing to be like, oh man.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, the value of Stadia gets less and less with this, right? Because it's
beating
like,
that dead horse.
You'll be able to stream all these games. You could do what Stadia does, right? While also being able to play natively on your system.
Yeah.
And so I think that and also PlayStation Now is already available on a lot more platforms than Stadia is going to be at launch, right? Like you can... Because, Stadia, sorry I'm going on this tangent, but Stadia is only going to be available on PC and then select mobile devices, by which I mean only the Pixel devices at launch, which is so weird. Such a weird decision.
Yeah.
Whereas PS Now, they're just available on a lot more platforms. And I think that, Microsoft and Sony seem to be doing the streaming thing better than Google, who is only doing streaming,
Yeah, but you're not going to get Orcs Must Die 3.
True. Not going to get Orcs Must Die 3. You have a point there. Okay. Well, that was an interesting conversation about, the Sony. However, that's not the only Sony news I have for you today, believe it or not. Right. However, this one also involves Microsoft. We got some next-gen leaks. Can you believe that?
No.
Maybe.
Well, maybe.
I don't believe you.
Well, we got some leaks. Who knows if they're real or not, of course. But according to Gizmodo, we got the dev kit name for PS5 is Prospero.
Mm-hmm.
Yuck.
Both of the dev kits, both PS5 and Scarlet, include cameras in their dev kits.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
And specifically, Microsoft apparently... They're saying the Scarlet kit has a huge emphasis on the camera. The current camera is capable of 4K with 2 milliseconds of lag. There's demos of lighting changes similar to Snapchat, get some filters in there. Apparently, though, the PS5 one is using a little bit older camera tech. Of course, this is on Flux. But
does it play games?
Does it play games? Probably. But
there is a follow-up that Microsoft did.
Oh no!
Which does throw this all into question. A Microsoft spokesman, denied any camera technology is in development and that none has been delivered to developers in any form.
What?
Oh, so I missed this actually.
Yeah. So now there's a thing where it's like, well, I mean, that whole thing is sort of thrown into question now, right?
Well, maybe this isn't worth talking about.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting, though, right, is that, and this is worth mentioning as part of that, the GameIndustry.biz article that had all the Shawn Layden stuff, was that there was a source talking about the next-gen dev kits, right, and basically saying that that it was from a quote-unquote major third-party studio, or publisher, saying that they hadn't gotten... That, in comparison to where the PS4 dev kits were sent out, they hadn't gotten anything yet, right? That at this point, they were already seeing things, they were hearing things, they were being given things. That has not happened yet, that they are being more coy with this generation than most prior ones, in terms of handing things out to people and getting them started on it. Which may be why there is fewer leaks, right? This is sort of the first one that we've had in a while, but also makes you then wonder... does that mean that there won't be as many games at launch, right? Because
so I mean, this is weird because as I'm sure you guys know very well, AAA games, they take a while to develop. Yeah. And if you don't have dev kits, that's going to be tough, right? I'm sure they're targeting some, just some generic higher end spec. I'm sure Sony has kind of told them, hey, target this, whatever. But yeah, it does make you wonder, what kind of game are there going to be? A wide variety of games available at launch? Who knows,
and it also ties into a Jim Ryan statement we talked about a couple months ago, if you remember, right? Jim Ryan was when we talked about how he mentioned how you can't be talking to every dev everywhere, right? There's not possible, so you need to focus on sort of the big ones. He said Activision, Bethesda were the two that he specifically called out as you need to make sure to maintain those relations. And sort of people at the time took that as oh, that probably means they're not doing as much indie outreach as they did during the PS4 generation, a bunch of stuff like that. And this sort of maybe leads credence to that, right? That maybe, the big boys are getting it, but even some of the smaller publishers aren't, which will be an interesting situation.
And I mean, I think that we've kind of seen that, right? And it's a very big shift in strategy from PS4, right? Which had a lot of indie games in the first year, and they made it kind of a focal point, right?
Yeah, but we've kind of seen them slowly inching away from indie games.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen over the course of this generation them, de-emphasizing indies more and more. Right?
And I don't understand why. I will never understand this.
Yeah,
I mean, I can kind of, not that I agree with what I'm about to say, but I can kind of
devil's advocate.
He's the devil's avocado.
Yes. They perceive PlayStation to be this brand of, prestige and your big AAA experiences. Mm-hmm. I guess indies don't necessarily fit with that mold of what they view as their ideal, the content available on the platform.
Yeah.
Fuck their ideal.
I hope this new change of leadership will change that fucking way.
That hoity-toity bullshit can go to hell.
I mean, Will specifically mentioned a quote from Jim Ryan, the now head of Sony Interactive Entertainment. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't hold out hope on that.
Yeah. That mindset fucking makes me roll my eyes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's, I think, I feel like we're dunking on it, but, last week, right, when there was the State of Play, they had Humanity, they had all these games that are indie, but definitely sort of lean into the prestige side of things, right? But, I saw a lot of people in the comments being it was 20 hours of snooze and then Last of Us, right? And you sort of think,
20 hours?
20 minutes, excuse me. But you sort of think, you can get mad at the people, but also the way you condition your audience, right? There's a give and pull to this, right? And if suddenly you don't talk about these types of games for years, there's going to be a process where your audience has to relearn to value them, and that that can be a problem when you do suddenly next gen comes around. There's not as many games that are able to come out in a single year as tends to happen.
I mean, so what you're telling me is that this is all their fault because they condition their audience to fucking think this way.
I mean, and they definitely have blame to take. I think is how we can word that, And it's interesting too, though, because we just talked about them gearing up for subscription services, right? I think an undercovered big part of Game Pass and part of the big story coming out E3 this year. A lot of people noticed, wow, there's a lot of games coming out day one Game Pass, right? A lot of those games were indie games, because I think that they're very cheap ways to bolster your subscription library, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a thing that's kind of beneficial to both parties, right? Because Microsoft only pays them about $1 million, which is a drop in the bucket to them, right? But then that team of 3, 4, 5 people suddenly receive a lump sum of $1 million before they make any sales on any other platforms. That feels pretty good too. For them,
Yeah, and then a bunch of people get to play their game that might not have played it before, and they start talking about it, and
And we've seen, we've had indie devs come out and say, hey, just by being featured on the Xbox Store prominently because we signed a deal with Game Pass, people who are not on Game Pass are buying our game on Xbox. When previously Xbox, this generation on the Xbox One, indie sales have been, to be honest, they've been just trash, right? People.
I carried it on my back. I really did.
Damn.
people weren't buying indies on Xbox One, but like I think with Game Pass and with Microsoft like putting a big emphasis on them and putting a spotlight on them on their big E3 stages and stuff, I think that it helps, right? I mean, we've seen proof that it helps. I think that's interesting.
What's the last small like mid-tier game that PlayStation published or developed?
Well, I mean, funny they just say that because they just published a game called Ready Set Heroes, both on PS4 and the Epic Game Store for some reason.
Yeah, strange, wild.
Yeah, and it just kind of came and went. Like it was announced in a state of play, but like this thing got no fanfare. This thing, it just kind of like, oh yeah, that's out.
Did it get good reception at least, or?
I can't tell you. I don't know.
I haven't seen anyone that's played it, to be honest. Yeah. Right? Like it's that sort of situation.
Radio silence.
Because it's not getting marketing push or anything. It's just not. It's just like they just kind of put it out there, and that's
yikes.
Yeah. And that's sort of for a game that they published themselves, which is
crazy. That's troubling. What the fuck?
Yeah. Speaking of troubling news, though, I do have some sad news to report. And that is Alpha Dream, the developers of the Mario and Luigi series, are going bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know exactly what that entails, or is someone going to pick them up? Who knows? We really don't, But I think it is safe to say that, things are not going well there, and we're probably not going to see an Alpha Dream game for a while, if ever, truth be told.
Yeah.
That
Luigi
sucks.
dead.
Yeah, Mario and Luigi, they are the developers, like I said, primarily, they pretty much only made Mario and Luigi games.
Yeah. A lot of former Square people.
A lot of former Square people.
A lot of people that worked on Mario RPG ended up in Alpha Dream. So
Yes, specifically, the people who made Mario RPG kind of broke off from Square and made their own company, and this was their thing. It is worth noting, because a lot of people are like, what is it because the 3DS game sold so poorly? Like, what happened? I do have a little bit of insight into what exactly happened. Not a complete picture, but it does seem that they were having trouble staffing up for HD development. Mm-hmm. Because, these guys were making handheld games pretty much since their inception.
Yeah.
Going from 3DS to full HD development, that's a big jump, it seems like they were having trouble with that. They were working on a game for seemingly Switch and PS4. I don't know if that's completely true or not. But maybe it's possible that they were working with the publisher that wasn't Nintendo for whatever game was coming out next. Mm-hmm. It just seems like they could not properly staff up. They just did not have the resources to be able to do that, and so that's kind of why they're going bankrupt.
And part of that probably, as of like 2018, there was like 46 employees, right? Obviously, that's not a lot for an HD game. But part of the problem I think probably of staffing up was that their games had not been doing well for a while, right? Like that ties into it, It's part, two parts of the whole sort of, and that can be attributed to a bunch of different reasons, right? But like, it's a bummer, straight up. There's no other way. Obviously, primarily because people will probably potentially lose jobs, right? But also because I think that for a lot of people, like Mario and Luigi, is emblematic of like a certain time in Nintendo. Right, I think, in a cool way, where sort of they let it get wild and weird, and obviously they kept, not saying that the games that they worked on post sort of DS era were all trash. I think that they're largely fine, but
they're lackluster though.
Yeah, they were lackluster, right? But for a lot of people, Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story and even Partners in Time were these big formative games for them.
Yeah, two great ones, one pretty good one.
Yeah.
It just kind of sucks that, that won't be there anymore. And so that's...
Well, I hope Nintendo, buys up their staff or something. I don't know, hires them for some project, because they've been...
they've who knows what they'll do, but, Arzest used to be Artoon. That company went out of business. For some reason, Nintendo saved those guys. So, and also with when Hudson went south, right? Mm-hmm. They hired a bunch of people and made a studio called ND Cube, right? Yes. To continue working on Mario Party games. So maybe Mario and Luigi, these guys get the same treatment.
You just mentioned Artoon?
Yes.
Yo, that's the company that made Blinks.
They did, and they also made Yoshi's Island DS.
Wait, I did not know they made Blinks. I knew they made Yoshi's Island DS, but whoa.
Fucking fire those people, what the hell?
Okay. And Yoshi's topsy-turvy.
True.
Yeah. So those guys, after they went bankrupt, they formed Arzest, and Nintendo continued to work with them when they became Arzest. No. So maybe the same thing will happen with Alpha Dream. Who knows? It would be weird if they just let because Mario and Luigi, even though the two recent 3DS remakes just sold like garbage, especially Bowser's Inside Story, which is one of the worst selling Mario games. Period. Yeah.
Right. Which is wild for how. But
I think you can blame the 3DS for that, right? And not necessarily
3DS in 2019.
Yeah, because even Dream Team and Paper Jam are both million sellers. They did well. I mean, nothing like Bowser's Inside Story, which, but the DS was just a monster, right?
Yeah.
But
I have a question. Do you think the decision to do the two remakes right at the end of the life cycle of 3DS, do you think that was the decision on Alpha Dream's part, or do you think that was Nintendo being pump these out, please? Yeah, so my theory on that is it was a buffer for them to be able to work on an HD game, hey, put something out, because I don't think those games are particularly expensive to put out, Right, so you don't think that had anything to do with them going bankrupt? I
wouldn't say anything, but I will say, because I don't think necessarily, I don't think, for example, HAL suffered big time for Kirby's Epic Yarn failing on 3DS, right? I think that these games were definitely just, hey, let's... Because if you look at the credits of both of those remakes, it's a very small amount of Alpha... they're already a very small company, right?
Yeah.
But, none of the creative guys were on that. Even, barely any programming guys were on that. It's a very small team. So it's very clearly these were just buffers for them to be able to, kill time to, properly staff up for an HD game, essentially.
There's a non-zero chance that there might be a game that's going to come out down the line that, in the middle of the credits, you're going to see Alpha Dream people worked on it. Yeah.
So,
who knows?
Breath of the Wild 2.
But, so, it's a bummer, but hopefully it'll resolve in a nice way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hope so, man. I would love to see a Mario and Luigi game on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
New one.
Speaking
or maybe somebody to fucking pick up Paper Mario. Jesus Christ.
Well, intelligent systems, I think. Considering
they haven't been doing a good job. Look at fucking Sticker Star where it is in the list.
I know, but we're in a new era of Mario games. Okay,
okay.
The Switch hasn't. Look at all the games. The Switch has literally fucking put a brand new hope into every single franchise that has come out. If Paper Mario came out on the Switch, I would feel pretty good about it.
They listened to fan feedback on fucking Mario Party. Yeah. Mario Party. So I feel like Paper Mario, I think there's a decent chance. Speaking of games that went from 3DS to Switch, though, we got Game Freak, Pokemon. Yeah,
they're
our
still
favorite topic.
They haven't stopped yet.
Yeah, they haven't stopped yet. So Game Informer's newest cover story is Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to talk about a little of the tidbits. Nothing too major that we got, but there's some cool stuff that we found out from it.
I would love to.
First of all, I should say what there's not, because there's a lot of confusion around this one.
Yeah.
So it was initially reported that there'd be 18 gyms in the game, some major league, some minor league, because that is what the director of the game said.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to be a bit of a mistranslation. He was basically saying there's 18 gyms in the lore of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Because people always ask, where are the gyms for all these other types,
Yeah.
And basically he says, there's a gym for every type, but not all of them qualify to be in the majors. And the majors are the ones you're going to interact with in the game, and there are 8 of them. But he didn't say all that stuff, right? But now we know they've clarified there are 8 major gyms in the game.
Both Sword and Shield will have 8 gyms, though we do know that there will be some gyms where there's different gym leaders, right? So the example they use, we already know of one, right? There's a fighting type gym in Pokemon Sword, but there's a ghost type gym in Pokemon Shield. And so, there may be a total, when you combine, there may be more than 8. There's already at minimum 9. Right?
Yeah.
But, who knows how many there'll be. Definitely won't be 18, though.
Imagine expecting more than double the amount of gyms you normally get.
And also, don't expect to be able to fight those minor leagues in your game. You're only going to do the major league stuff.
We were kind of the fools, because on the website since June it said that there's 8 gyms in the game. So, we sort of all just forgot that when it popped up. But
yeah. My question is, though, they said there's one for every type. And I'm doing the math, and I'm like,
oh, no.
There's 18 types.
There are 18 types.
But there's 8 gems in each game.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that... So the 18 number is not how many total there are between the two games. It is in the lore, in the Galar region.
Yeah.
Theoretically, there are 18.
Right? If they somehow screw me out of a dark type gem again, I'm going to be fucking mad.
It might happen.
I would be prepared for it.
This is bullshit. Where the fuck is a dark type gem? God damn, dude.
The thing is, dark type normally gets put on the enemy team. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's normally where the dark types go.
Well, like, we've had dark type Elite 4 members, but, like, give me a dark fucking type gym leader, god damn it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one day.
Maybe now.
Maybe in this game, who knows? So I just want to go through some bullet points of some features in this game that we learned from the Game Informer coverage.
Mm-hmm.
For one, autosave is a thing now. You can still manually save and you can turn off autosave, but you no longer have to do that.
Didn't we know autosave was a thing before this?
So we saw like a glimpse of it, but we didn't know to the extent. So it is, the whole entire game has autosave. And for example, it is no longer like, you can trade. We talked about this. You can trade with someone, still play the game while you're trading, right?
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And it'll complete the trade, and you no longer, for the first time in the series, you no longer have to do a hard save after you trade. It'll just automatically do that for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that bullshit anymore. Because there used to be like a good 5 seconds you have to wait to do a hard manual save, right?
Yeah.
After you finish the trade, no longer have to do that. So that's cool. Makes the game a lot more snappy. And the director mentioned, hey, this may seem like a no-brainer, but this was actually super hard to implement in the back end. So, so he wants you to know that was, not easy.
Yeah.
But is there more than one save file?
Probably not. I'm gonna go ahead and assume no. Although with the Switch, you have different user profiles.
Different users are on different saves. If it's like Let's Go, that's how it'll work.
We're doing it.
HMs are not in the game. They haven't been in a while, but it looks like there's not even a replacement for HMs. Like, if you remember in Sun and Moon, they had the,
they're kind of
rideable
right?
Pokemon?
Yeah, there is. There's the Corviknight taxi.
There's the Corviknight taxi, which lets you fly previous. So it's like fly, and then your bike can get upgraded to float on water. Right?
Sure. Yeah. But it's not. But I guess the distinction is you don't have to have a Pokemon that does it.
Yeah.
It's not like Sharpedo.
Yeah.
You pull out a Sharpedo or a Tauros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, but you didn't need that in the last game too, right?
No. So in Let's Go, all your HMs were tied to your partner Pokemon, and in Sun and Moon, it was you would call up a Tauros, or you would call up a.
That's what I meant.
Which was great, but now it seems even more streamlined.
Now it's even more streamlined, yeah. So you don't have.
Yeah.
It seems like to tie into the wild area a little bit, it seems like there's not going to be really any physical barriers to block you, which is interesting. Who knows how that'll play out exactly in the game? I'm sure there'll still be some you can't go here just yet, right?
Yeah, there's got to be. It can't be completely open world, I would assume.
So I'm sure there's some barriers, to, but it does seem like they did say that it is going to be a little bit more open thanks to the wild area. So I think that's neat.
Why are you obstructing my freedom? I just want to be free.
Yeah. And then some other quick bullet points I want to talk about. I completely forgot, to be honest.
The EXP share is no longer a toggle.
That's what, yeah. So EXP share. So this one's getting a lot of I guess controversy. I don't really want to call it controversy because it's kind of silly. But some people are really mad about this. So basically, the EXP share is no longer in the game. But now the way experience works, all 6 of your Pokemon in your party will get the same amount of experience. It doesn't matter who's in the lead.
Good.
Why is that controversial?
Basically because to a lot of people, turning off the XP share basically, let them artificially make the game a little bit more difficult. So to these people, it seems you're just making it more easy.
Let me tell you something else if you haven't realized it yet. Pokemon fans are kind of dumb sometimes.
I have realized that already.
I don't care. I'll say it. I'm not tiptoeing around it.
Yeah, it's true, right? It's it's a little silly. Especially in a game like Pokemon, just by nature of how modular the game is, you can catch 150 different types, more than that.
150.
But yeah, ha ha ha. But there's a lot of ways to still make the game more difficult. Just restrictions you can put on yourself that don't necessarily have to do with like the EXP share,
Yeah.
So to think that this is like, oh my god, now the game is just so brain dead easy, which spoilers, it already was, like
it already was, for real.
Especially for seasoned Pokemon players, like the people who were complaining.
Like there were people that after playing 3 Dark Souls games were like, I figured this out. It wasn't that hard, right? Like in Pokemon, you've played 7 of these now, and it wasn't that hard to begin with. Like at some point, it's gonna be easy because you know all this stuff, right?
Yes.
Like knowledge.
And then it's still fun. It's still Pokemon.
And also, it's designed with 10-year-olds to be able to beat it. Like, come on.
That too.
And you can still, I'm sure you can be creative enough to make it harder in some way.
That's why we got Nuzlocke challenges and shit.
From a potential game design perspective. Sorry.
There's that, and then, I fucking hate the fetishization of fucking hard games. I don't give a fuck. Like, just make the game
too,
like I don't want to fucking measure my EP in every fucking game. I'm not gonna play ultra hard difficulty. Get the fuck out of here. Let me play the game.
I've seen the argument for hard. A lot of people say they wish there was easier modes in hard games, right? And defenders of that will be like, well, not every game has to be a cakewalk, right?
Yeah.
But I think the inverse can kind of be said too, right? Like it's not like
not every game has to fucking make you want to break your controller in half.
But a potential benefit too of this is that honestly, turning the EXP share on and off is a big modifier, right?
Yeah.
And now they can balance the entire game around this one thing, right? Do I think it'll be like immaculately balanced? Probably not. But I think that it makes it easier to look at the game and say, okay, almost everyone will probably be this level here, right?
Well, it's funny you say that because Game Informer also specifically calls out the max raid battles. So these we found out a little bit more about how they work, and there's like it's almost basically like Pokemon Go, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a ranking system, like you'll know how hard the raid is, right? And according to Game Freak and Game Informer, it seems like those hard ones, they're gonna be harder than you think. There's gonna it looks like they're gonna give you some trouble,
Yeah. It's fun.
Man.
They're specifically designing those max raid battles to give a problem to seasoned Pokemon players, which I think is interesting.
Dude. Like call your buddies, get the help, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's funny because they specifically the Game Informer does a really cool thing called like rapid fire interviews, right? Where they do like 100 questions in like 5 minutes. It's very fun. You should watch the video. But they specifically say who's the most competitive guy in your office, and both Masuda and Omori say it's probably Iwao. I think it's him. And he's the guy that specifically said, yeah, sometimes I lose in like the 5 stars. Like sometimes I'll be in a spot where I'm like, yeah, I'm boned. And so I think that it's funny that they said, like, unrelated, they said the guy who's the best at the game is the guy that also said that it's hard. And I think that's, but I think, once again, there's that thing of 1 to 5, right? There's the thing where it's easier, there's the thing where it's harder. It's good. It's fine,
Yeah.
And I don't know if, was this confirmed in the interviews? I can't remember if this was a rumor or not. But was there also a thing that had to do with changing your Pokemon's like natures and stuff?
Yeah.
Yes. And so I guess that's the last thing we'll kind of talk about here.
Thank God.
I might have one more.
So basically, they mentioned the ability to. They specifically called out, "Hey, you'll catch Pokemon on your adventure, and you'll love them to death, but then you won't be able to use them after you complete the game, right? When you go into competitive, you have to breed the Pokemon and do this and that. So we're kind of changing that. We want you to be. They specifically said they want you to be able to use the same Pokemon that you caught on your original playthrough, right? And on that, they'll say, hey, a Pokemon, when you catch them, has a specific nature, right? And basically, to break it down in an easy way for people who don't play Pokemon, it gives you a bonus in one stat and a what's the opposite of bonus?
A negative.
A negative in the other stat, right? And so and so that affects the game quite a bit, right? You need Pokemon with the correct nature. You'll be able to actually change that in a certain way. They didn't detail how exactly, but they did specifically call out natures. Yeah. And so combine that with, we already know from Sun and Moon, the ability to, it wasn't Sun and Moon, right? That you can max out the IVs. So, because I think when people saw autosave, one of the reasons people had pause was, oh fuck, but the legendaries I catch, if it autosaves, that'll be a useless ass Pokemon. Right?
Yeah, because you're gonna get a legendary with a shitty nature.
Yeah, it's gonna have shitty IVs. It's gonna have a nature that's not conducive to the playstyle for that legendary. But apparently that is no longer. I mean, you don't have to worry about that anymore, and that's exciting. I think. I think that makes competitive more accessible. And also, hey, I think it's very cool that the Pokemon you use from the beginning will no longer be useless in competitive.
Because that stays to the nature of Pokemon.
Yes.
Where Pokemon competitive scene, right, has built up this thing, of when people think about it, they think about grinding and breeding and getting hundreds of Pokemon that you basically just abandon.
That's why I never fucking do it.
I don't need any of these. These aren't what I want, So, Pokemon doesn't want, I feel like they don't want that.
That's very antithetical to the theory of what Pokemon is, right? Which is your partner.
Exactly. And this plays to what the image they want. And that's fantastic, and I love that so much. And there's people out there once again complaining about.
I mean, I will say, I want to mention this real quick. They did say you will still be able to breed how you used to if you want to. If that is your thing,
if that's a thing,
you can still.
And people
do that.
still will. People still will for shinies, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's cool. And if you still want to do that, fine. But it just makes it so much more accessible.
It's not a bad thing to make competitive more accessible, right? To make more people... Because it is a big gap between, what is required of you to do a normal story playthrough of Pokemon and what is required of you to get into the competitive scene. There's a big gulf. Right?
Yeah. Dude, it's daunting as hell. When I didn't get into competitive until X and Y. I did. Yeah, it was already easier at that point.
But to make it more and more accessible, it's only a good thing, right? It just gets more people into competitive. And, that's an aspect that people really like. You should be happy that more people are getting into it then.
Yeah, if more people get into it, you have more people to challenge you with fresh ideas to make you and them better.
And the more that Game Freak will focus on that aspect, right? Because people are like, they don't want to think about the competitive scene, right? But, clearly, the more and more people who get into that, the more and more focus it'll be. And I think
I think this game has already kind of shown me that they're leaning into more competitive more than ever. They've been more and more into it, but I think this is showing one of the biggest steps in it. And I don't know, it just looks fucking awesome. Yeah. I'm excited for it.
I think it's really cool that...
Any last thoughts on Pocket Monsters?
I want to correct the record on something.
Fuck them.
Okay, correct the record.
There's been a number floating around that 1,000 people are working on this game. I want to correct the record a little bit. So they did talk about growing, right? And that came in from our interview. And they said that they have basically doubled since 2017. They used to have around 100 people, and now they have around 180 to 200 people, right? For HU development. But they said if you count Nintendo, if you count Creatures Inc., if you count localization people, it's about 1,000, right? Which Pokemon is translated into 7 different languages, and also if you count subcontractors, right? And so, sort of they are clearly. I would recommend listening to the Game Informer podcast in general because they talk a lot about sort of the different perspectives the developers have, which I think is always interesting. And Masuda sort of always said that for him, the hardest thing in development is communication, right? So they never want to get too big because he feels like a company of 500 people that can't communicate is half as efficient as a company of 200 that can, right? And obviously there are going to be some fans out there with the Dexit stuff that are going to say, I would take 500 people gladly. But I thought it was an interesting thing of them acknowledging and sort of having to grow as a company, but sort of doing it in their own sort of way, because Game Freak has this weird origin as an indie style studio, being smaller, while having the biggest franchise in the world. And so sort of I recommend watching that podcast if you have the time.
I mean, I do think it also kind of puts to rest this idea of, because I think one of the biggest criticisms that Pokemon has gotten from some of these fans, right, is Pokemon is one of the biggest franchises in the world. Why doesn't it have a staff that represents that, right? But beyond just saying, hey, they want to have a team that they can control, whatever. And to be fair, a lot of those 1,000 people are directly working on this game, right? Yeah. I mean, it is just because Game Freak is 300 people, there's a lot more people they have to contract to do graphics, to do art, to do, this and that, and it's modeling, and it's just a lot of people, this game is getting a big budget. It's silly to claim otherwise. It's silly to claim because people say, why don't they just throw more money at it? They are throwing more money at it.
But they didn't try hard enough. That's what everyone's telling me.
I mean, clearly. Okay, that's enough of Pocket Monsters, though. We've had enough. Ills has had enough.
Fuck.
Hold on. I want to say one more thing.
Okay,
now let's talk about Final Fantasy VII so we can lock Brandon out.
I want to say one more thing. You guys had that last week. And now that it's officially October,
okay,
we only have until next month Pokemon is out.
Yes, it is a month out. It's exciting. It's coming soon.
Yeah. A little more than a month.
But by the time this podcast is out, they'll have done that weird 24-hour stream that they're doing.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool.
We'll have more to talk about next week.
Next week. Look forward to it, Dill.
Fuck that. Nope. Canceling it.
Okay, one last news story I want to talk about before we call it a day.
Deleting this Discord server.
So, a little game called Brain Age is back.
Wow.
Oh my god.
This was unexpected, to be quite clear.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is a game that, it came out on 3DS, to be fair, right?
Yeah.
It started on the DS, was fucking huge. Came out on 3DS, sold like shit, right? One of the worst selling 3DS games they had, all generation long. It is weird that Brain Age is coming back, right? So it's coming this December in Japan. I'm sure localization will come a little bit later, right? Because these games, believe it or not, Brain Age is actually very hard to localize. But yeah, it's coming with a stylus, an official stylus that they're going to be selling separately as well.
Ooh, nice.
It is a game that purely I don't know if you can play. Yeah, you can. You can totally play on TV because there's now multiplayer modes, right? You can pass the Joy-Con to your mom and challenge her in Brain Age.
Yeah, there's a dumb mini game where it's the like simple math thing, but you hold your hand up to the IR sensor on the right Joy-Con, and you have to like do it with your hand, like 5, 3, 2, 5.
There's also a rock paper scissors with that. So the IR camera. This is the third game to use the IR camera. By the way,
they're gonna get their value out of it one day.
It can recognize rock paper scissors. I don't know exactly how that trains your brain. Maybe it's something I don't know. Do you think
it's very much for children.
Actual does Brain Age have actual benefits, or are we just being lied to?
It's a great question.
I think you should ask Beyonce because she played it.
I think we're being lied to. If I had to guess,
I mean, I think it's one of those things that sort of like how like it says like if you read when you get older, it keeps your brain fresh, right? Like if you do Sudoku, it's good for your brain. Like I think it's sort of like that. Like it's not gonna keep you from getting dementia, but it'll maybe keep you a little bit sharper for longer. You know what I'm saying?
Probably not.
Someone should look up the science behind. Is there science?
Well, Dr. Kawashima is an actual brain doctor. Well, he's not a fraud.
That is true. That is correct. He is not I'm not here to say otherwise.
The devil version of him is a fraud.
I just want dementia instead. I'll just take dementia.
Okay. So Brain Age, there's a game coming to Switch this year. And it's interesting, I wanted to mention it specifically because, a lot of people were like, hey, what is that? Is Nintendo only going to make, core games from now, right?
Big boy games.
I think in the month of September, we got the reveals of Ring Fit Adventure and Brain Age. So I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Fuck you. Ring Fit Adventures AAA, baby.
Ring Fit Adventure also use the IR camera.
And it's interesting, too, though, because, it's funny because Brain Age, I think a lot of people would immediately ask, well, why is this not a mobile? I think it's funny that they're focusing on the Joy-Con for this game to really differentiate it. Hey, this is why it's not on mobile, because it's the Joy-Con.
There's also a million games like Brain Age there now.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Do you think there's other stylus-focused games coming to the Switch? Since they are now packaging their own stylus.
I mean, Mario Maker was kind of
swap.
Mario Maker, was one. Brain Age is now. Is there anyone that you want?
I mean, Nintendo has these teams that were around, and I don't think that they're gonna ask them to suddenly be making big boy games, right? So I imagine so, right? These teams that were still making games like this will continue to. So yeah.
I have a very specific request. HAL Laboratory, I know you're listening. Picross 3D round 3. It's time. Let's do it.
It's not time.
Time's 3D up. Is fucking great, and I know Brian
time's expired
because he likes regular Picross. But Picross 3D is fucking great, and I need more. That's all. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's the news.
Yep.
So let's move on to our favorite segment, the list.
The list.
So you can follow along in the paste bin below, so you know what the hell we're talking about, where exactly we're ranking these games. Last week we ranked 2 games. Well, we ranked 1 game. We re-ranked another. So we re-ranked Link's Awakening. It is now at number 9 or something. I should probably double check.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who added last week?
I did. Hotline Miami.
Hotline Miami. And where is it?
At number 35.
Number 35. So this week, I believe it's Will's turn.
It is.
So Will, take it away.
Yeah, so here I am. Once again, I'm torn into pieces. So obviously, we have different types of games that we pick. But I want to do one that is appropriate, I think. Pour one out for the homies. I want to add Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
There you go.
Whoa.
Now you're playing with power.
Not on the list already?
Not on the list already.
Old list.
Wow.
Okay, I don't know what that is, but all right.
But
I think you do.
So this game, Alpha Dream's first game that they worked on Mario and Luigi's series, obviously, is it's RPG straight up, right? But it does carry over the action command elements that were sort of in Mario RPG back in the day. But the main thing, obviously the gimmick of it, is that you are both Mario and Luigi. There is the Bros system, right? You don't just have one character that you're sort of attacking and defending with in any turn. You're using both of them. And they have different, sometimes they have different abilities. And then obviously a thing that I love a lot, the Bros attacks, where they team up to do different things. But this game, I love. Right, obviously I played it when I was young, so there's a little bit of nostalgia associated with it, but I went back and I played it again 2 years ago. And I love, the game is extremely charming, right? I think the Bean Bean Kingdom is a great setting. Really cool new world, right? Also, I think the battle system obviously gets refined, I think, by Bowser's Inside Story, really, but such a really good fundamental base, and I think a really good job of implementing platforming in a Mario RPG, and maybe the most successful way of any of them, in my mind. And so I think there's just a ton to like about this game. It had Geno's in it. So where would I put it?
Geno's in it.
Geno's in it. He's in a little.
He's in a little arcade game. He's the little guy that comes out and says, "You want to play again?"
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But like I said, I really like this game a lot. Where would I put it on the list?
Wait.
You want to talk about it?
I just want to talk about how expressive the art style is. Like, Mario and Luigi are fucking hilarious, and Fawful is amazing.
It's a very funny video game.
The writing is so good. This is such a funny game, I don't think it's very common, actually, for me to, laugh out loud when I'm playing a video game, This game, Mario and Luigi does it. It does it, and it does it often. It's a
question.
It just, it has a great story, for what it's worth. And the music is great too.
The music is fantastic.
I love that battle theme a lot.
Yes, and the gameplay system is genuinely I think one of my more liked RPG battle systems. It's obviously very involved, right? It takes from most Mario RPGs with the I forget what the word they use
action
for
commands.
It is. Yeah.
I always call it time based.
Pretty much.
Commands,
But the battle system is genuinely just really fucking fun. It's just all around. It's just a really well made RPG, right? On top of just having this Mario charm and fleshing out the Mario characters. We see sides of Bowser and Luigi and that we don't usually.
This is one of the games that sort of establishes Luigi the coward. That's sort of become his defining trait. But this and Luigi's Mansion were around the same time and sort of started making him be the character that he is now. And Bowser too being the goofball, obviously, right?
The game constantly making fun and clowning on Luigi is very one of the things that I really liked.
Yeah.
It's very good.
So where do you want to put it, Will?
I want to ask a question though.
Sure.
Ask a question.
Article 7, Section 6.
Oh boy. Rules again.
Says that we have to do.
I'm going to make an executive decision and say that I think the Game Boy version is still the best version.
Well, I disagree. So what now?
Here's the thing. I have not played.
So much better than the 3D model.
I haven't played the DS version, so.
I'm gonna be honest with you. They're basically the same fucking game.
I know, but I'm just saying. I don't think has anybody here played the DS version?
I haven't played it.
I played the 3DS version. I'm telling you, there's there's not much difference between the two. I'll be honest. It's just
and I seeing the graphical style, I kind of like the Game Boy Advance one better.
I do.
Sure, yeah.
It just, I don't know, it has this more appealing look to me.
And I hate to be this guy, but like a lot of the enemy types, like not just different to be different, but like I think that they sort of standardized a lot of the enemy types to sort of fit Mario conventions. Like the Koopas that were these weird, remember the weird ones that were like on all fours and had the plant on their head, right?
Yeah.
Like they make them into normal Koopas. And for me, like stuff like that, like I like that the Bean Kingdom Koopas look different. They're not the same, right? Like that it's a different place. And so sort of taking that and then making it look just like the Mushroom Kingdom, to me, sort of lessened it a little bit.
Fucking Miyamoto ruining everything, motherfucker.
Who knows?
Whoa. Slow your roll right there.
Well, Muzzy knows what I'm talking about.
I want to correct the record here. I'm pretty sure the reason the Superstar Saga remake was the way it was is because they just wanted to reuse assets.
They used the same. I think it was. They had the Koopa model.
They had those models ready because of Dream Team and Paper Jam, and they were just like, let's.
Well, why were those games so shitty? Well, Miyamoto.
Well, see, now we're getting to the problem.
Listen, no one bats 1,000, all right?
The Dream Team is actually no. Dream Team was not like. I mean, I don't like Dream Team, but it doesn't have.
but
it doesn't have the Sticker Star problem though. I just want to make that abundantly clear. It does not.
That's
like
true. That game is still.
But Dream Team, no, it does not. But Dream Team was the shittiest one until Paper Jam. So
it was. But
just put some respect on his name. That's all.
I would put this one. I might get shotted down on this one. Oh man, this is hard. I'm gonna say I want it like around like Pokemon Red and Blue, like maybe above Tails, or I want it above Tails to be honest with you. But I don't know if that's just my personal feelings being higher on it than maybe the collective. To me, the
why is Tails above Pokemon?
That's where it belongs, bitch.
Oh boy. Yeah. I don't know. I think I would. The Earthbound is my other sticking point below it. At 28.
Yeah. Earthbound.
Yeah, but Earthbound should also be higher. This is the problem.
That's true.
So should Donkey Kong Country too. But, I'm here every week.
There you are.
Clearly, we have to have a a Super Nintendo themed re-rank. Only Super Nintendo games get re-ranked.
Don't give Ills the biggest boner of his life.
All right, Super Metroid #1. Let's fucking do it, bitch.
Oh,
see,
he's in cracker.
Open the door. Let me walk right through.
Okay, I need you to. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say I am fine with it being above Symphonia, but I'm also fine with it being lower.
Being lower than Donkey Kong Country 2, I'm fine with that.
No, I want it above Symphonia. It's I want it above Symphonia. I'm good with that.
How do I feel about this?
Wait. Yeah. Well,
If you came up to me and said Bowser's Inside Story,
I would say if it was Bowser's Inside Story, I would say with the bullet.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bowser's Inside Story I think is the best, but I think I want to do this one because it's their first, right? And,
yeah, and I like. No, I mean, of course, I like.
Yeah.
I applaud you for that because that's what I usually try to do as well.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't know if the first one is better than Pokemon or Tales of Symphonia.
Jesus Christ! I don't want to get locked into a 2-on-2.
What if we put it below Pokemon?
Join me.
I would put it below Pokemon. That's where I wanted to stop it.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
I think you should join me with below Donkey Kong Country 2.
No, that's too low.
That's in the Promised Land.
I think you should re-rank Donkey Kong Country 2.
Okay, you're right.
Donkey Kong
We're not
Earthbound.
I'm not falling for this trap, but looking at Donkey Kong Country 2 at number 30 on the list after we put this game up tonight is gonna hurt until November.
I mean, it's no tropical freeze, so I mean.
Oh boy, here we go.
It's gonna be gone until November.
Well,
I will do unspeakable things.
I'm willing to put it below Pokemon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I think we've come to an agreement. Okay. So that was the list. Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga is now number 24. Surrounding it, we got Tales of Symphonia, Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
Jesus Christ!
That's just not a movie reading it as it was typing.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wait, should I stop typing this?
I just wanted to make sure, okay? Overwatch and Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. It's got good company.
By the way, this is my highest ad ever. Congrats to Will.
Wow, congrats to Will.
He did it. What a mad lad.
All it took was you to backstab Saf when he was gone.
Yeah, he finally got revenge
Saf
too.
fucking loves this game.
He fucking loves
He
this
ranked
game.
this in the old list.
I forgot about... No. Saf adores this game. You actually pulled a Saf.
Oh,
Two birds with the one stone.
Yeah.
Dude, I thought from the get-go you were doing this shit on purpose.
No, I was not. If I had waited for Saf to be around, we maybe could have got above Symphonia. So,
He's been fuming this whole time while he's editing this podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Well,
Saf,
since
it was
the
not
list
an
started.
attack on purpose, but I mean,
Are you gonna believe him?
You've had it coming. Is all
But
I'll
you
say.
had it coming. Yeah,
Look at his lying eyes.
So that was our podcast. You can find us on wherever you can find a podcast that is not named Spotify. So, iTunes and all those other podcatchers. Those are cool. We're also on YouTube. Check us out on YouTube. Ills works hard on maintaining that.
I don't know
YouTube.
about hard, but I do it.
Hey, I'm giving it to you, okay?
I just want to be honest.
Also, Brandon, what Brandon actually works hard on is the Jump Up Supercast Game Club.
Sure.
Oh, only him?
Yeah, yes, only him. What are you play? What are you guys playing next, Brandon?
Sin and Punishment Star Successor.
Sin and Punishment Star Successor. So stay tuned for that episode. Those episodes come out every other Thursday. The main podcast comes out every Monday.
Yeah, if you're listening to this episode when it comes out on Monday, it's coming up this Thursday, baby.
Ooh. So yeah, look forward to that. Otherwise, Twitter is the best place to keep updated with all things Jump Up Supercast. It's twitter.com/JumpUpSupercast. You can find out when we got podcasts up. You can find out when we're streaming on twitch.tv/JumpUpSupercast. One day we will. And also we're on Instagram and Facebook, /JumpUpSupercast. Otherwise, who wants to take us out?
I will if you want.
Will wants to.
Will.
He knew. So, for the final phrase. We're not going to say his name probably much anymore because he's retiring, so I do want to give one final shout out to Shawn Layden, because I do think, as much as we've critiqued maybe some of the stuff, it is always cool to have a person at the head of a company that is making consoles that truly you feel like cares about games, and I feel like he really did. He started there almost 25 years ago. He's never not been there, and so for that, I want to applaud him for all of his work, and I hope he has a happy retirement. Even though I hear that, what's his name, stabbed him on the way out. But hopefully he can recover.